Hi everyone, I'm Kyle Dyer and welcome to Colorado Inside Out on this Friday, May the 10th. Congrats to Nikola Jokic for being named the most valuable player in the NBA for the third time, but also congrats to those most valuable players in state government who worked together and compromised as the clock was winding down on the 2024 Colorado legislative session. A lot of big decisions that affect you were made since our last show last week, so we have a lot to look back on and a look forward to. So let me introduce you to our panel. We have Patty Calhoun, founder and editor of Westward, along with Maran Goodland, a chief legislative reporter for Colorado Politics, the Denver and Colorado Springs Gazettes, along with Luigi Del Puerto, editor at Colorado Politics and the Denver Gazette, and Sage Nauman, strategist, commentator, and columnist, and owner of Anthem Communications. Thank you all for joining us. It's been a big week. Lawmakers worked with one another and Governor Polis to create what is being referred to as the largest property tax reduction in 20 years in Colorado. This compromise plan passed with just a few hours to spare in the session, Patty.
Well, last week we were talking about the compromises that were coming, and they were surprising compromises, the oil and gas compromise that was coming from Polis. We had some of the housing compromises, and this week at the last second, we had the property tax compromises. It was not as successful for Polis as and the Dems as the previous two were, because we still had Colorado Concern and Advanced Colorado not signing on, which means we're still going to have ballot issues that would really contradict what was passed. But it is a big tax break. We talked about it last week, that the property taxes will go down $1.3 billion for Coloradans. You're also going to have a commercial property tax break that will be over 3 years, and that was one of the sticking points. But the compromising this year was surprising, I think. No one expected things to go as smoothly as they did. Marianne can correct me. But last year was so rambunctious and actually ugly on the last night. And here things went pretty smoothly, except for these two groups not signing on to 233.
Marianne.
Oh, what fun we've had this week. The minimum amount of time that a bill needs to get through the legislature is 3 days, and that's what Senate Bill 233 on property taxes had. And it went down to the wire. It was one of the last bills that received its final approval. One of the things that's interesting, the last amendment put on the bill is that if initiatives 50 and 108, 50 is on the ballot, 108 is in signature gathering mode. If those measures pass, 233 will be repealed. It won't take effect. The other thing is that the $1.3 billion in property tax relief that this bill provides kind of covers for the fact that the property tax relief from last year actually expires this year. So this is a way of continuing that property tax relief. That said, the property tax relief that has been passed in the last year, both in the special session and in the 2023 session, neither one of them addressed business issues. Neither addressed commercial rates. So the fact that commercial building owners are going to get some relief this year was a pretty significant difference, and that's what got Republicans to the table and to get them to sign off on this.
Okay, Luigi.
Yeah, I mean, they had to pass something. They are facing a ballot measure. It's going to be pretty well funded from what I understand. And of course, Advanced Colorado and Colorado Concern ultimately did not support the measure that came out of the state legislature, but the state legislature had to do something. If they were not going to do something, this ballot measure in all likelihood is going to pass. And Marianne's absolutely correct. The amendment that was tacked on puts this legislative fix, if you will, proposed legislative fix, in it directly and effectively asks the voters, pick which one you would like. Would you like the Advanced Colorado Property Tax Initiative, or would you like this proposal that just came out of the state legislature? In any case, they are compelled to do something.
Mm-hmm. I want to add, I think the campaign that you're going to see against those two ballot measures is going to be intense.
Really? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
It'd be like HH last year.
Really
More
smart.
so.
More so.
Yeah, I think that regardless of what happens with the ballot measure this November, I think it was it was a little bit surprising to see the amount of bipartisanship we saw. I think that was a departure from years past. Senator Kirkmeyer, who's a friend of mine and someone I used to work for at the state capitol, did an incredible job negotiating that bill and getting what she did out of it, as were others who were involved in that conversation. I mean, the fact that we're seeing any kind of cuts whatsoever, even if they are future cuts, slowing the increase of property taxes, that's still significant. So, if the measures failed in November, this will at least still be in place so that people are paying less in years to come. And as for conservatives, obviously this is dividing the kind of conservative movement in Colorado quite a bit. You know what? This isn't really an either or. I mean, it is because it will be repealed if it passes. But take this, you're getting something out of this, and then if you want to support the measure in November and go further, that's fine too. I don't think there's any problem with that. I think a lot of conservatives will be voting that way. But at the end of the day, no matter what happens, whether this stays in place or the November ballot measure passes, there's going to be some relief. It's just kind of a question of how much.
Colorado lawmakers introduced 705 bills over the last 4 months, and even last weekend when lawmakers were working, there were still 200 or so bills yet to be dealt with. Let's go, Marianne, with some of the stuff that passed and failed. This was a really hectic week for you covering all this.
That's no joke. I want to shine a light on the big three, maybe actually the big four bills that came out of this session that were enormous major public policy issues that you don't see Democrats and Republicans collaborating on. And it was frankly wonderful to see that kind of energy in the building versus the energy that was in the building last year, which was just downright destructive. Those big four, property taxes, obviously, the Tabor refund mechanism, which will provide an income tax cut, something that the governor and Republicans have been seeking for a long time, and Democrats would not, under any circumstances, sign off on that. But the governor had a pretty good carrot stick issue here. Democrats wanted to see some really big Tabor surplus money used for issues such as family tax credits and workforce tax credits. So if they wanted to poll us on that one, they had to agree to income tax cuts. The oil and gas agreement, those two bills, and then the last one, which hasn't really gotten as much attention, is a 30-year remake of the School Finance Act that is going to focus a little bit more on the students who need to be served, whether it's English language learners, low-income, special ed students, who are going to be at the top of where the funding goes to instead of as an afterthought.
Luigi, what were you watching this week?
Yeah, so what's really fascinating and interesting to watch is the kinds of bills that died and the kinds of bills that went through. And more specifically, kinds of bills that received bipartisan support. If you look at them, housing, taxation, many of them are bills that deal with practical issues. And then those are kind of philosophically driven wedge issues. Assault weapons ban, want to add a safe, quote unquote, safe injection sites bill, which didn't go anywhere.
Talking about construction defects, that's one of those issues that obviously kind of goes under the radar, especially for the general population. But I'm hopeful they can come back and find a solution on that, because that would be huge to jumpstart condo construction. I know, the Common Sense Institute did a long report on condo construction, how it's kind of just fallen off a cliff here in the state of Colorado. That is significant, because that was always the entry-level home for people, and it no longer exists. It's no longer being built because basically the risk is just too large for people, for these developers. And so I'd love to see them come back on that. I think Democrats are having a hard time figuring out exactly what they want to do on housing. You have a lot of bills that are talking about supply, expanding supply. So, for example, basically legalizing ADUs, accessory dwelling units across the state, eliminating occupancy limits, things that could potentially increase supply or increase options for folks. But then at the same time, you have a lot of bills coming in that are like tenant protections. Those things are going to tend to conflict. And so the question is, are they going to be dedicated to expanding supply in the state? I think that construction defects would be a massive step in the right direction. Or the progressives going to win in more tenant protections. Those kind of things end up driving developers and landlords away from putting homes and apartments on the market.
Patty.
The housing issue was fascinating as you watched it, especially with the density issues, how that got amended so it became fewer areas and closer to where light rail was or where public transportation was. So it became much more limited, but still it passed. Construction defects not going through remember it was about 10 years ago, it was the hugest issue out there. And we've seen 1 or 2 condo buildings built since then. Just this week, one on 18th was announced. So you wonder, are they still going through? Will they be able to go through? How do they make it work? But the big shocker to me was RTD, that after all that talk, nothing, and there was plenty of talk, and you've got to think there's a consensus that RTD is broken. And you look at the mall and you say, yes, it's slow, there are real problems, but no one could come up with a solution that would really work for everyone. And that was a surprise, and I think we'll see it coming back.
Mm-hmm. And well done, Marianne. 26 years this was for you?
Yep.
Covering the legislature. How would you rate it?
This was, because of the bipartisan efforts that took place in the last week to 10 days of this session, I saw lawmakers behaving yesterday. They were downright giddy. And you contrast that to the last day of session last year when Republicans walked out in the House because they didn't want to vote on the property tax bill. And progressive Democrats took the Speaker of the House into a back room and just chewed her out for her efforts on being conciliatory with Republicans. Yesterday was one of the most fun days I've seen lawmakers have in a very, very long time. And frankly, thank goodness.
Good. All right. Now, even though lawmakers are adjourned, battles are over certain issues in Colorado have not ended. In fact, voters will have their say on many issues on the November ballot. We've mentioned the property tax initiative will be on the ballot, and there's one that still is getting signatures. What else, Luigi, are you watching that voters will have to decide?
Just really quickly, I'm very happy for Marianne.
Yes.
I counted how many stories she wrote last month. It's 62 stories. She practically wrote 2 stories every single day of the month, 7 days a week. And as you know, they were working several weekends last month and last week as well. We do have a couple ballot initiatives or ballot referrals that voters will be voting on. Ranked choice voting, one of them. The right to abortion in the state constitution. This enshrines the right, which I see this as more really an electioneering ploy or strategy, if you will, on the part of Democrats. If you look at all the states that have an abortion ballot measure in the elections, and that issue has won for Democrats.
It seems like it's going to be a very long ballot this year, Sage.
Yeah, I think it absolutely will. I will add, too, congratulations on 26 years. That's incredible. As somebody who got to work with you at the Capitol for 4.5 years, I know how dedicated you are to journalism because of what a pain in the butt you could be for me sometimes. But you did your job extremely well, and you are extremely well respected there, and it's very well earned, and 2 stories a day is incredible. With that being said, the one thing I'm looking at in November are primary elections. So I guess it's not November, it's coming up sooner. But what's going to happen in the primaries? We talk about progressive legislation at the state capitol. We talk about bipartisanship. That can very quickly go, the entire Capitol can change very quickly depending on how these primary elections go. And especially on the Democratic side, I mean, they're the party in power, there's going to be a lot of contested primaries where we're going to be seeing more establishment or moderate. I mean, these people tend to be still quite liberal, but going up against very, very progressive candidates who tend to side with Elizabeth Epps and Tim Hernandez and the Progressive Caucus. Those primaries will certainly, I think, dictate the trajectory of this state moving forward. And so those progressive bills, we talk about dying on the calendar, 50-some bills. Could those be law in 2025? I think that is something that could be realistic depending on how those primaries go.
And that is first end of June, last Tuesday of June, right? Yeah. Patty.
We have to remember that there are still more ballot measures that are going through the petitioning process. There are up to 50 that could get the okay to go through. We're not going to have 60 ballot measures in November, but we're going to have a lot, and some of them are going to be really controversial. I have to disagree somewhat with Luigi, because if you saw the women, young women, coming in with the signatures who want to enshrine the right to an abortion in the state constitution and also have the state be able to pay for it in certain cases, this is really a huge issue to women, I think, of all political backgrounds. So that's going to be a big one that is going to go through. We're going to see many more election issues. There's so many that are still being petitioned. we are going to have the ranked choice voting question, I think, but there are going to be a lot of other possibilities on changing that. I think the one thing we know, besides I think the abortion bill will go through the measure, we will also see the removing the prohibition of same-sex marriage from the Constitution. That will go through pretty easily in Colorado.
The same, in my conversations with Senator Janal, who was the primary sponsor on the same-sex constitutional amendment, the issue really is about preemptive action should the U.S. Supreme Court overturn Obergefell, which was the 2015 decision. So this isn't just about driving Democratic turnout, it's actually putting into removing from the Constitution this ban that was put in place in 2006 as a way of enshrining it in the Constitution should the Supreme Court make a different decision on Obergefell. To Sage's point on the primaries, absolutely. I think it'll be fascinating. There are 24 contested primary races in the House and Senate, almost 17 of them in the House and 7 in the Senate. About half in the House are of incumbents, which is really unusual, both on the Republican and the Democratic side. For the June 25th primary, almost anybody, any voter in Colorado is going to have a decision to make about what the direction of our state legislature.
Last week, Denver Mayor Mike Johnston tried to bring calm to Denver by asking Auraria campus protesters to pack up their tents and leave. That didn't work. And this week, Johnson is out again talking about vibrancy in downtown Denver, trying to jumpstart the energy that we have downtown. And on Thursday, he announced a plan to accelerate economic growth. Sage, let's start with you about all that he is facing, the city is facing.
Sure. So on the Auraria campus encampment, I actually visited it twice. Kind of a hobby photographer, and moments like that just make for good photos. Look, in 2004, I believe, this campus issued a rule saying that there was no encampments, no camping on their premises. That rule has obviously been thrown out. Mike Johnston came in and he said, you guys can protest all you want, but you got 30 minutes to take down the tents. After 30 minutes, nothing happened. And as much as I am a supporter of the First Amendment, I don't care if they want to protest all day long. The fact is that the rule exists for them. They cannot camp on the campus. And obviously that rule's been thrown out. And so it's going to be no surprise when things get out of hand, when more rules are broken, and when police and the mayor are ignored. And so when it comes to maintaining order, I think that it shows a lot of weakness. If you're going to say you've got 30 minutes to take down your tents, and after 30 minutes nothing happens, you look very weak.
Patty.
I'm going to go to Mike Johnston on Thursday talking about downtown and set it up in front of the Union Station, which is celebrating its 10 years of its renovation. Definitely been a big success, but a couple issues didn't come up at the press conference. He's going to expand the financing that was done for Union Station and help make it a success. He didn't talk about the fact that that really long tunnel that was set up for the buses, and so that goes underneath Union Station to the back, which was the scene of so much crime during the early days of COVID. And that was a big issue. And so let's talk about the next projects that come along. Let's make sure they're designed a little better than that issue. And the mall didn't come up. And the fact that the mall is still under construction, behind schedule, hard to bring downtown back until that's done.
Back to the Auraria issue, it's real concerning to me to see that protesters are kind of having their way. Not that, and it's not about, to me, it's not about the issue. It's about how do you resolve it. And there doesn't seem to be any efforts whatsoever to try and resolve this issue. The one thing that I noticed this week in trying to watch the rest of the world going on while I'm buried in things at the Capitol was this incident this week on the zip ties. The initial story that came out was that the protesters had put zip ties on the Tivoli, on a room in the Tivoli building, which I believe the Auraria Board of Education was meeting in that room. And that was information that came out from the president of Metro State. How the heck do you make a mistake like that? Because it was the police who put those zip ties up and then later put some sort of special handcuffs to keep that door closed. Metro didn't do themselves any favors with their students. Don't be surprised that they aren't listening to you after that.
Luigi.
Well, Chief Ron Thomas was at Citizen Oversight Committee hearing last week, and he basically said the hands of the Auraria campus officials are tied, meaning to say they don't have enough resources, they don't have enough police officers, actually implement, if they want to move in, dismantle encampments, arrest people, or area police department can't do it. If Mayor Mike Johnson says, deploy your officers, go make the arrest, dismantle the encampment, it will happen. I think the fact that it's not happening means that between Ron Thomas and the mayor's office, they have decided that they're not going to come in. It's very clear from what the chief of police said that there's absolutely nothing the officials of the 3 universities in charge of that campus, there's nothing they can do unless the Denver Police Department does it for them. That's one. Now, so far as energizing downtown Denver, I think this is the second, third press conference about energizing downtown Denver. I think Michael Hancock said the same thing, energizing downtown Denver, and I'm sure the previous mayors did the same thing. Until they fix the 16th Street Mall and all the construction that's happening there, and all the talk about getting it done quicker, which I heard last year and the year before, unless that's actually going to happen, I think that downtown Denver is still going to be in trouble.
Okay. All right, now it's the time of the show. We're going to go down the line and talk about some of the highs and lows of the week. Let's start with something negative, Patty.
Well, we'll return to the effects of the area protests, and that's having to move graduations, that the 3 schools have all moved their graduations either to Lowry or to the Coliseum. Then we also have the graduation controversy in Douglas County, where they were going to go to the Air Force Academy, realized that some of the students wouldn't be able to go, or their parents, more to the point, would not be able to go. So good move to cancel that and move it back.
Move it back, yeah.
This is not a bad thing, but condolences to the CBS Channel 4 family and to the family of Rick Salinger, who passed away Wednesday night. He will be missed.
Very missed, very missed. Luigi?
I was going to say the same thing, so
Okay.
condolences.
Absolutely.
My low point of this week is watching what I consider to be true statesmen in the state capitol having to leave because of term limits. I think about Senators Gardner, Smallwood, Ganal, and President Fenberg. Me and President Fenberg agree on, on probably issues I could count on one hand. But these are individuals who uphold that institution, they respect that institution, and they've made that institution better. When Fenberg was giving his tribute to Senator Bob Gardner of Colorado Springs yesterday, he said that few people in this building get to be icons, but you're one of them. You're one that decades from now they'll be talking about. These are people who truly, I think, made this state better with their contributions. They worked their tails off, and I'm proud of them, and I'm sad that they will be leaving because I think our state's worse off for that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Something good, Patty.
I'm surprising myself by saying this, but I went back to the cell, which is reopened. It's right on the Golden Triangle. It's the Terrorism Museum, and it is really fascinating, and the update was very good.
Oh, okay.
My good news of the week is that the session's over with, thank God. Congratulations to the lawmakers who accomplished quite a bit for the state of Colorado, and in their best moments were bipartisan, which is good for people in Colorado, this divisiveness. You listen to people like Julie McCluskey, the speaker, who has talked about how Colorado is not like Washington. Last year, Colorado was exactly like Washington. Divisive, couldn't get things done. This year, we're kind of back on a better path.
Good.
Well, my boy is turning 13 in a few days, and 13 years ago, nearly 13 years ago, he was this small right here. I could fit him with a palm of my hand and look at him this way. And so I'm very thankful, very grateful for that. And he told me, technically, this is him. Okay? Technically, I'm going to be a teenager. Practically, I still have the mind of a 5-year-old, much like Dad has the attention span of a 5-year-old when Mom hands out tasks for the weekend.
Mine's a little bit personal. A couple weeks ago, my neighbor, direct neighbor next to me, Kevin, told me that him and his wife were going on vacation. They went on a cruise, And about a week later, I got a text message from a neighbor who lives on the other side of them letting me know that Rhonda, his wife, actually had passed away on that vacation. Rhonda and Kevin were the first neighbors we met when we moved to Brighton. Rhonda used to work for Brighton Police Department. She's 60 years old, has wonderful kids, wonderful grandkids that we see every day. We loved enjoying her 4th of July celebration. She'd put on the food she'd cook, the pickles she'd make, spicy pickles, they were delicious. But I just want to say to her family, my condolences to you, and to Rhonda, Godspeed wherever you are.
Okay, very good. All right. And I know this has been a Marian love fest tonight, but my positive is for you and for all the journalists who have worked so hard for these last 4 months to unravel the intricacies of bills, follow the ebbs and flows of legislation, work with the various personalities within state politics to bring all of us stories that explain what's happening in our state capitol and in a way that resonates with all of us. The legislative process can be really tricky to understand and process. So the fact that we have reporters helping us understand what's going on, explain what is happening, that is such a good thing. We need to be aware, and the more aware we are, the more connected we are, and hopefully it is onwards with Colorado with this connection and people working together. So thanks to all the press corps at the Capitol. You deserve a break. Got it?
Yeah.
You deserve a break. Thanks, panel. Thanks for coming in the day after the, a couple days after the legislature to talk about this. We appreciate it. And thanks to you all for watching at home and caring about what is happening in our state. And thanks to those who listen on our podcast. I'm Kyle Dyer. I will see you next week. And of course, happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there.
PBS 12 believes in the power of original, local programming. Help us bring more shows, like the one you just watched, by donating at pbs12.org/program support today.